This video is brought to you by Public.com. The world is changing. There are over 40 billion devices connected to the internet today, and that number could reach over 100 billion by 2030. It's not just smartphones and laptops, but TVs and even toasters. And while internet-connected toasters are clearly the future of breakfast, they're also a target for cyber attacks. Last year, identity fraud cost 42 million consumers a total of $52 billion. That's over $1,200 per person, and identity fraud is just one type of cyber attack. Now that more and more people are working from home, businesses have to safeguard their networks against every single device that every employee can connect to it, even by mistake. That includes your touchscreen toaster. It's totally worth it. Want to know which company is king when it comes to stopping these security breaches? My name is Alex, and I'll show you by looking at the science behind this stock. The company I want to talk about is Crowdstrike, ticker symbol CRWD. According to some of the best market intelligence firms like Forrester, Gartner, and the IDC, Crowdstrike is the leader in endpoint detection and response, or EDR. Even more impressive, they landed the #1 spot on last year's Fortune's Future 50 list. To me, that's even more prestigious than the Fortune 500. Fortune's Future 50 list identifies publicly traded companies built for robust growth and future outsized market returns. A lot of awesome companies that I talk about on this channel and that I invest in end up on this list. Twilio, Block, Mercado Libre, Roku, Shopify, and Nvidia, just to name a few. So how is it that Crowdstrike sits at the top of this list? To answer that, we need to answer a different question first. What is it that Crowdstrike does exactly? Crowdstrike focuses on endpoint security. An endpoint is any remote computing device that can communicate over a network. That's a pretty huge total addressable market, and technically even our Wi-Fi enabled touchscreen toaster is an endpoint. So are all the other devices connected to your Wi-Fi at home, including your smart devices like TVs, watches, thermostats, cameras, speakers, and even some of your lights. And of course, then there's your phone, your tablet, your computer, and so on. Each one of those endpoints is a potential point of entry for a hacker. Cyber attacks aren't any one thing. They actually run the gamut from exploiting security bugs in out-of-date software, all the way to uploading and executing harmful scripts that can steal your personal data and even damage every device connected to the same network. That's a big problem for businesses since their employees can now connect their work computers to the same network as all of their unsecured smart devices at home. That's where Crowdstrike comes in. Crowdstrike has a cloud-based cybersecurity platform called Falcon, which is purpose-built to stop breaches, prevent these cyber attacks, and respond to any attacks that do manage to get through. Crowdstrike's platform has 3 key parts: the cloud modules that make up the platform, the proprietary threat graph technology that powers it, and the Falcon agent that sits on each business endpoint like your work laptop or your smartphone. Let's talk about the Falcon agent first. Many legacy cybersecurity applications are on-premise software, meaning they get fully installed on each machine. If you have a work laptop, think about software like McAfee or Symantec. These providers typically have different apps or agents designed for a single purpose, like a firewall, an antivirus, or identity monitoring and protection. That means if you want all of these different services, you're going to be installing and configuring multiple independent pieces of software. Then they all run at the same time, which means they each take up memory and processing power, which slows down your machine. Instead, the Falcon agent captures data and sends it back to Crowdstrike for monitoring and analysis. Then, if Crowdstrike sees an indicator of attack or an indicator of compromise, it can take action in different ways depending on which Falcon cloud modules that client has enabled. As a result, the Falcon agent is a single, tiny, lightweight application that takes seconds to deploy on each physical machine on a network or virtual machine in the cloud. As Crowdstrike develops new cybersecurity solutions, they become new modules on the Falcon cloud, while the Falcon agent stays very small and easy to deploy on every machine. As new Falcon modules come online, Crowdstrike can offer them to existing customers without having to install anything new. So this cloud-native modular architecture is what lets Crowdstrike offer security at scale and speed, which is why they're sitting at the top of Fortune's Future 50 list. So let's take a deeper look into their modules and the threat graph technology that powers them. But before I get into that, if you're a long-term investor, I really recommend checking out Public.com, a great investing platform and social network rolled into one. Public is the perfect place to share investment ideas and learn from thousands of long-term investors. I've written several articles on high-growth companies like Tesla and Palantir there myself. Public also hosts live town halls with fund managers and CEOs of publicly traded companies. I even got to ask Kathy Wood a question during her town hall. Public is free to use, doesn't charge fees on standard trades, and lets you buy slices of stocks for as little as $1. Right now, they have an exclusive offer where you can get a free slice of stock worth up to $1,000 when you fund your account. So head over to public.com/ticker-U to sign up for free. And a big thanks to Public for that amazing offer. Alright, so let's talk about CrowdStrike's threat graph technology first. That's their big differentiator in my opinion. There's a huge and important branch of math called graph theory. Don't worry, I'm not about to hit you with any homework problems. At a high level, a graph is a description of things and their relationships. Yep, that's it. Let's talk about a social network like Facebook. That's a network of people and their relationships. People have properties like their name and birthday and workplace and school and location. Some of those properties are different ways that we can connect different people. For example, everyone with the same workplace is a coworker. Everyone with a home in a similar location is a neighbor, and so on. You can also use combinations of properties to make guesses about these relationships. For example, everyone who went to the same school and has a close enough birthday was probably a classmate. You can also have networks within networks. For example, you and your family make up a small network where everyone is connected to each other. That network is part of a larger network, like your neighborhood, which is a network of nearby families and households. Your county is a larger network of neighborhoods. Your state is a larger network of counties, and so on. This idea of representing all data as an interconnected network, or graph, works really well, no matter the size, speed, type, or quality of the data. That's why many of the biggest consumer-facing companies on the planet represent their data as graphs. Facebook's network of people and things, Google's network of websites and links, Amazon's network of products and vendors, CrowdStrike's network of computers and the data that's flowing between them. That's what CrowdStrike's threat graph is, a graph data model that collects and analyzes huge volumes of security-related data across large business networks of servers, users, and endpoints. The kinds of data stored in the threat graph are things like lists of processes running on each machine, logs of command line entries, logins and connections for each user account, and so on. Because these data are represented as graphs, CrowdStrike can leverage the massive amount of research, development, toolboxes, code bases, artificial intelligence, and machine learning models the entire software as a service industry has specifically designed for these types of problems. For example, Threat Graph allows multiple detection methods to run at the same time, like checking network data against a list of known malware attacks, using machine learning to identify normal behavior patterns on the network and flagging anomalies, and so on. The endpoints and users aren't bogged down by all these processes running in parallel because the Falcon platform and this threat graph live on the cloud. If threat graph detects something in one customer's environment, all customers benefit from it automatically because every time CrowdStrike finds a new use case or process to use in one customer's network, they can quickly test it and validate it across all of their customers by adding that process directly to their cloud platform. I spent a lot of time on the threat graph because this is the real science behind the stock. The processes that run on top of this threat graph are CrowdStrike's cloud modules, which are the third piece of the puzzle. The Falcon platform has 22 modules spanning the entire spectrum of security. I'll cover them at a high level here, and my goal is just to show you how diverse these modules are as a result of being built on top of this threat graph. Endpoint security modules manage the antivirus and firewall software on each endpoint device. Cybersecurity modules check and manage virtual machine configurations and show the applications running inside each container. Threat intelligence modules do things like quarantine files on a computer that look malicious, and then look for that same file on other machines on the network, as well as the behavior pattern that got the file on there in the first place. Identity protection is about managing an organization's list of employees, roles, and network access, and flagging things like old accounts, weak passwords, and credentials that seem to be shared, and other common identity attack patterns. Log management is an interesting one because log files generate a ton of text data very quickly. The challenge here is identifying the relevant entries in specific log files to better understand a security event. So, early last year, CrowdStrike acquired a company called Humio, which focuses on ingesting and analyzing large amounts of log files in real time. Humio lets CrowdStrike build alerts, scripts, and dashboards to help systems administrators understand the health and status of their machines. XDR stands for Extended Detection and Response. CrowdXDR builds on top of CrowdStrike's core endpoint detection and response capabilities by adding in other security tools, services, and datasets that help detect threats beyond the endpoints. For example, XDR can look at email data to blacklist past email scammers instead of waiting for the next scam email to come in. Remember, all these modules are capabilities that are built on top of that threat graph. As CrowdStrike expands by collecting and analyzing new kinds of data, they can keep building new modules for their customers to subscribe to. CrowdStrike also has managed services. Here, they can provide additional resources to help monitor parts of the platform. For example, having a specialist respond to or review a malware incident. They can also provide full 24/7 monitoring of your entire platform, which is effectively outsourcing a business's cybersecurity team back to CrowdStrike. This also gives CrowdStrike a very deep moat and makes them very sticky. CrowdStrike has over 20 different modules and services, which means that they can replace multiple cybersecurity applications and even some staff members if the need arises. A competitor would have to provide a much better or much cheaper set of solutions to replace CrowdStrike once they're entrenched within a company. Alright, so CrowdStrike's Falcon platform has a small, lightweight agent that gets deployed on every machine. That agent helps them build a threat graph on the cloud that shows how every user and device on a network is connected, as well as the data that's passing between them. CrowdStrike builds modules on top of that threat graph to do all kinds of cybersecurity related processes that businesses can then subscribe to. Now that we know what CrowdStrike actually does and what makes it special enough to top Fortune's Future 50 list, we have all the context that we need to check out their financials. CrowdStrike reported their most recent financials in early June. Their revenue only has two parts, subscriptions and managed services, both of which we just covered. Their managed services account for just 6% of their total revenue, with the other 94% coming from subscriptions. CrowdStrike charges per endpoint and per module package. For example, adding an antivirus to every endpoint might cost $9 per month per endpoint. Adding in threat intelligence, firewalls, and identity security costs more for each endpoint that they're added to, so the revenues per customer can add up pretty quick. Because of the flexibility and scalability of the Falcon platform and the underlying threat graph, CrowdStrike can offer their solutions to customers of any size. 15 of the top 20 banks, 65 of the Fortune 100, and over half the Fortune 500 are CrowdStrike's customers today. They have around 18,000 paid customers around the world, which is up a staggering 57% year over year. Even crazier, over 70% of their subscription customers currently pay for 4 or more modules, 60% pay for 5 or more, over a third pay for 6 or more, and they just started reporting the number of customers that pay for 7 or more modules. CrowdStrike has very strong customer and net dollar retention rates. Their gross retention shows that less than 3% of their customers churn at any given time, meaning they retain around 97% of them or more. CrowdStrike also has a net dollar retention rate of 124%, meaning that for every dollar an existing customer spent with them last year, they're spending an average of $1.24 with them this year. This is a number that rises as existing customers spend more money and falls as they add newer and smaller customers that they still need to earn the trust of and ramp up with over time. I expect their net dollar retention rate to keep climbing as CrowdStrike's customer growth rate slows down and their average customer is with them for a longer amount of time. For now though, CrowdStrike is firmly in growth mode, with their annual recurring revenue growing 61% year over year. Speaking of which, let me highlight some of the risks of investing in CrowdStrike. Like almost every other company I cover, this is a high-growth, high-margin software business. That means they need to keep attracting the best talent in an increasingly competitive market. As with most companies in growth mode, that happens in part by stock-based compensation, which is currently at around 20% of their total revenue for the quarter. I think it's a good thing that CrowdStrike compensates their employees with stock, but we want to see SBC fall as a percentage of their gross revenue. That will probably happen by their revenues growing, not just these compensations shrinking. Second, they do have real competition in the endpoint detection and response market. SentinelOne and Palo Alto Networks are two of many cybersecurity companies that they compete with, but their biggest competitor in the space is Microsoft, which is pretty much as tough as they come. Currently, they're the market leader in the endpoint and server security markets, capturing about 1/8 of the revenues in the space. Microsoft is right behind them, owning about 1/9 of the market. So we want to keep track of CrowdStrike's actual market share in this space, as well as all of the new cybersecurity markets that they enter, as they come out with more modules. And maybe they'll even release one for my smart toaster. The third risk is, of course, this macro environment. As with any company with negative net profits, they're going to keep getting punished as interest rates continue to rise. This is a real double whammy because as their share price falls, it takes more shares to acquire companies and to compensate their staff over time. But that also makes now a great time to put Crowdstrike on your watch list, because now you know that the company behind the stock is dominating its market and growing fast. Hopefully this episode helped you understand the science behind this stock and why Crowdstrike could be a great long-term investment. Want to know what other stocks I think are great long-term investments? Check out this episode next. And if you feel I've earned it, hit those like and subscribe buttons to let me know that you enjoyed the science behind this stock. Either way, thanks for watching, and until next time, this is ticker symbol U. My name is Alex, reminding you that the best investment you can make is in you.